Konnichiwa, watashi no channel e yokoso. Watashi wa Jamie desu. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at hours spent in my languages so far in 2023. I didn't mention it in any other video, but basically from the beginning of 2023, I wanted to just track the hours that I spend in each individual language to then try and correlate to how well I know each language and to see whether there are any gaps in my learning. And just to have a bit more information as to which languages I pay more attention to, which languages I'm giving more time to, essentially. So with that being said, what I did at the beginning of 2023, literally on the 1st of January, was I made a note on my phone with all the languages that I would study in this year, or at least the ones that I studied so far, and I can add languages to it in the future. And basically just every time I spend time in a language, I would make a mental note of the time which I started, so for example 12 o'clock or midday, and then I would keep an eye on the time when I would decide to finish studying that language for that day. Could be 1:30, so it could be an hour and a half after I originally started, or it could have been a little bit more uneven, for example like 1:25, and then I'll just add on 1:25 as opposed to 1:30. So I'd keep it into 5-minute intervals. If I had to round up or round down, I would spend a few more minutes in that language just to bulk out the minutes, just because I didn't want to over time add too many false minutes where over time it may add up to an hour or two of minutes where I didn't actually spend time in that language, but because I rounded up or rounded down, it sort of counted for that, if that makes sense. First of all, keeping track of my hours in my languages means that I actually am more aware of which languages I spend more time in and which languages I neglect, which straight away proves to me which languages I need to pay more attention to, and it also makes sense to me why some of my languages may be a little bit more weaker than others. As I'm recording this video, it is currently the 15th of January at about 8 p.m. So this is all of the hours in every language that I've been studying thus far this year, and it goes as follows. You'll see it up on screen anyway. Hours spent 2023, Spanish with 19 hours and 30 minutes. Yeah, so with Spanish, I listen to just a whole ton of music. You know, there's a particular artist called Kora, which has really nice, soft, calm music to listen to, and I listen to that artist every night when I go to sleep. I listen to her when I am driving in the mornings, when it's very early in the morning and I can't be bothered for anything else other than just really calm music. I listen to her typically when I'm in the shower at the moment, again when it's really early in the morning and I can't be bothered to listen to anything else because I'm still trying to wake up. That alone adds up a lot of hours. But also just watching Spanish Netflix series and watching Spanish YouTubers, and that's basically how I studied my Spanish. Reading in Spanish as well, obviously. Not so much with actually sitting down and studying the language as you might consider studying, but instead I just more have fun with Spanish, and this is why I think I spend the most time in Spanish, because I'm trying to get comprehensible input in all of my languages. Spanish is by far the easiest language for me to get comprehensible input in, and so I'm spending more time in Spanish because I'm really trying to bump up my Spanish and my comprehension in Spanish this year. So that's why I think Spanish is by far top of the list right now. And it also proves to me why Spanish is probably one of my stronger languages, as well as the fact that I started Spanish many, many years ago, and I spent more time in Spanish than any other language just overall in my life. Next on the list is Polish with 15 hours and 5 minutes. Polish, again, there's simple Polish dialogue that I can listen to, which I can get comprehensible input from. There's a few bits of music that I enjoy in Polish. I did put a lot of my resources in Polish actually in a couple videos ago with my Polish resources, basically what I used to learn Polish with. I like to read in Polish as well. I still find there's a lot of vocabulary that I'm lacking in Polish, and so I read a lot in Polish, and so if I read, I typically will spend an hour session just reading in Polish. Whether I learn anything or not in that hour is not important to me in that hour. That is more just reading and trying to understand what I'm reading and just doing that time and time again. And so that again is why Polish is up there, almost at the same level as Spanish. That, as well as I genuinely enjoy learning Polish. I think it's such a fun language to learn, and every single day it's more fun for me to come to it rather than it being a chore. Here's the one that surprised me the most. Japanese, currently at 5 hours and 20 minutes in the first 2 weeks of 2023, which for me is quite a low amount of time spent in a language. Hence why I started up the video with a little Japanese greeting, because I wanted to start trying to get my Japanese a little bit more out there. You know, I wanted to try and start practicing my Japanese more. I technically started learning Japanese about a year ago in last January in 2022, I never really officially announced on a video like I did with my Polish, but I started it last January. And it's a difficult language. There's a lot of barriers in the way in regards to like having to learn the translation, but also having to learn the hiragana, the katakana, the kanji, and like so many other things that sort of goes in with learning a language like Japanese. And like I don't want to just learn one thing, like how to speak, for example. I really enjoy learning how to read in Japanese, for example, and so I want to learn how to speak it, how to read it, maybe in the future how to write it as well, because that's also a really fun thing to do. Ultimately, by doing this list and tracking my hours, I've realized that my Japanese is really lacking and I don't pay it enough attention. And it makes so much sense that after a year, my Japanese is still very basic and I still don't know how to say many things. That's the first thing by doing this list that's really helped me to realize I need to focus more on my Japanese. I really need to give it more attention to improve my Japanese, basically, to make sure that I don't slack and to make sure that I can continue just enjoying the language and I don't make it fall off, essentially, which can be difficult because obviously I'm studying, as you can see in this list, there are 7 languages in this list. There's 6 of them that I'm currently studying, so yeah, it can be a bit difficult trying to like juggle the languages, but there are only 4 of these languages that I actually try to daily focus on, and the other 3 are just sort of there. French with 8 hours and 55 minutes. Again, with French, I have a lot of music that I enjoy listening to. I showed off some of that music. Technically, it was only one artist, but an artist called Paris Combo, which I really enjoyed discovering French. And when I discovered French music, Paris Combo was just such a unique and really nice sound for me to discover. As well as there were some other really old artists in French that I discovered while learning my French for the first 2 months. And no doubt there's more French music out there, like I'm sure thousands of songs out there that I would enjoy if I just sort of opened up more and listened to more. It's just about finding the time to listen to it. I found about 30 songs in French that I really enjoyed, put it in my playlist, and then that's there. And then I listen to those same 30 songs over and over again until I get really used to them and until I know how to sing them. And then I would introduce more French songs, and the idea is that I would at least know the lyrics to some degree, and I know the song and the beat, and I can add in some new songs. So with French, a lot of it's from music, and a decent amount of it, probably about 4 or 5 hours, I would say, is from reading on Link as well in French. I don't have any physical French books, so it's all on Link, and that's about it. Currently, I haven't started watching French on Netflix. I technically haven't started watching French on YouTube. I've watched a couple videos, but nothing serious. So altogether, 8 hours and 55 minutes in the first 2 weeks in French. I'm not currently learning German, but I do listen to Rammstein, which is a really, in my opinion, really good band to listen to. I really like Rammstein. I've been listening to them for many, many years. I think it's been maybe like 15 years or so since I started listening to them properly. And a lot of the time nowadays, just because of time spent in like other languages and doing other things, I typically only listen to Rammstein when I'm at the gym lifting weights, because it's a very much like pumping iron kind of music. At least for me, again, like I just enjoy it. I really, because I know the music so well, I can sing in German pretty well, even though I don't understand a lot of what's being said. I can sing in German pretty well, and even though I don't sing it obviously when I'm at the gym, but like in my spare time, if I'm driving and I can sing it, it's a little bit of German exposure for me before I even properly get to start learning German. Considering I'm still spending time in German, I decided I'll still track those hours anyway, so that's an hour and 25 minutes listening to Rammstein, mostly at the gym, but also a little bit while driving as well. If you haven't already seen my video from a couple weeks ago where I spun a wheel and basically decided 2 different languages what I would study for the first couple months of this year, those 2 languages were Hawaiian and Swahili, and you can see at the side here 2 hours and 5 minutes in Hawaiian and 3 hours 40 minutes in Swahili, both respectively. Basically, these languages aren't ones that I'm spending time in too much in regards to like actually trying to learn and speak. I'm learning these languages just for a couple months to get an idea of the culture, just get an idea of like how the music sounds, to get an idea of things that I wouldn't normally study, and that's the whole reason I'm doing those particular 2 languages, as well as the other languages I'll be doing later on in the year as well, all decided by the same wheel that I spun in that video previously. There's not really too much to say about either Hawaiian or Swahili. I'm having fun studying them. It's something fresh and new for me. I do struggle to find the content to actually listen to them while I'm driving, which is a big bulk of my week, and so I don't really spend a lot of time in them because of that. And if I spend time in them, I have to be watching a video, or I have to be on YouTube, or I have to be somehow reading it on Google or whatever. I haven't really found much music that I enjoy in either language. I haven't really found any podcasts in either language, so it's been difficult for me to try and listen to these languages while I'm driving. driving. The only exception to that is the language transfer course in Swahili, which I've been listening to a little bit while I'm driving. Because I'm obviously a complete beginner in Swahili, it's difficult for me to drive as well as focus on the audio and the language itself. And so after a while, I find myself quite lost in it, because you're not really meant to be listening to language transfer while doing other things. The idea is that you sit down and you have your eyes closed and you just think about what they're saying and the language, and you really try and pause the audio and repeat everything. And in my case, because I'm driving, I can't pause the audio, and so I can't repeat everything in time. So it can be a little bit of like a rushed feel, in my opinion. And so I don't just necessarily play the audio in Swahili on language transfer all day long while I'm driving, but I'll give it like a half an hour here, 20 minutes there, just to like get a little bit of exposure every day, but nothing too extreme, because after like half an hour or an hour, I just feel like I want to go into one of my main languages, and at that point then I'll go into like, say, music in Spanish, or some simple stories in Polish, or any other things that I've already mentioned in this video in my other languages. So that was just a quick little breakdown of each language so far that I've been studying this year in 2023. I just wanted to track my hours in each language to give me a better idea of which languages I paid more attention to and which ones I maybe need to actually actively pay more attention to, i.e. Japanese being the main one. And so I'm hoping to bump this number up a lot more. I'm hoping to make Spanish not quite as high if it means other languages are going to be hindered. But ultimately, if I'm spending time in any language, it's better than me spending time in English, for example, because all 4 languages of my Spanish, Polish, French, and Japanese, I still have a lot of improvements to make. And so whichever language I spend time in, it's still good time spent. Just thought I'd do an update video on this. I want to do maybe a monthly update video on this, but with this being the first 2 weeks in the month, I may not do another one for the end of January, but then I may do one for the end of February, and then the end of every other month for the entirety of this year. So we can just track how many hours I do in each language every single month of 2023, and see how many hours I spend in each language every month individually, as well as just in total. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, rate, and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comment section if you'd like to see this sort of little mini series continue throughout the year. It's just something interesting for me to share with you guys in regards to like tracking my hours. Goshicho arigatou gozaimasu. Yoi shinichi wo sugoi shite kudasai. Ja ne.